We have a quorum. We've reached the appointed hour. This is 11th meeting of the Insurance Companies Amendment Bill, Bills Committee on Insurance Amendment Bill. Let us invite the officials into the room. Agenda item number 1. List of follow-up actions arising from the discussion of the previous meeting. The administration had a meeting on the 12th of January. Or rather, the administration responded to the question raised at the meeting on the 12th of January 2015. The paper has been sent to members. Yes, the Deputy Secretary. Now, this is a response to the matters arising from the discussion of the previous meeting. The first question is in respect of the financial year of the IA, or Insurance Authority. Members said that their wording is different from the Securities and Futures Ordinance. Is there any change in policy or meaning? It is just an amendment. It is just a change, but there is no difference. The second question is penalties relating to authorization of insurers, approval of controllers, so on and so forth. The appointments are made by the authorization is made by insurers and has to be endorsed by the insurance authority. If the persons appointed do not comply, then they are subject to certain penalties. There is no daily fine. There is only a single fine for an authorized insurer. But there is a daily fine for additional daily fine for controllers and directors. Now we are still discussing the matter, and we have yet to finish the discussion. The third question is in relation to the determination of key persons in control functions of authorized insurers. After the insurance authority. Yes, my apologies. This is about the definition of controllers. For those who perform controlling function, the FS can specify a function to be a control function by notice published in the Gazette. A member asked, after the notice is made, it has become a piece of subsidiary legislation. It is to be enacted by negative vetting. Does the LegCo has the power to amend this? In paragraph 5, we explained that when the FS makes a notice on the definition of control function, he may repeal or amend the subsidiary legislation, and the Council also has the power to amend the subsidiary legislation. The last item is on the disclosure of conditions imposed by IIA on the approval granted. Members asked what such conditions were. Para 6 gives you some example, and they are requiring an individual serving as the controller of insurer to be based in Hong Kong, or an individual can only serve as key person in control functions of an insurer for certain lines of business. Under Section 53A of the ICO, save some exceptions, IA preserve secrecy of and a person to preserve secrecy of any matters coming to his knowledge in the course of performing a function at ICO in situations which fall within exceptions set out in the same section. IAA may consider disclosure of approval conditions in an appropriate manner. We welcome questions. Any follow-up questions? All right. If there is none, then let's move on. Mr. Chen Kim-po. Well, I have no follow-up question concerning the points made by the official. About 1 or 2 weeks ago, the chairman, Eddie, and myself went to a consultation meeting with the insurance sector. Now, some issues might have been said in respect of policy, but there might be certain issues which the Insurance Federation would like to raise, and that is about the formation of the IIA and also the advisory committee. I just want to get a formal reply from the administration. The Federation, the wording of the Federation of Insurers has been given to the administration. They've got a lawyer to draft that provision for the administration. Insurance is a very complicated business. There may be there are 10 or 20 items under general insurance. I just want to hear the view of Eddie on this occasion. The Deputy Secretary, can you address those issues? As for the advisory committee, we propose to set up 2 statutory advisory committee. One is for general business, and the other is for long-term business. And it's also, I know that concerning the formation of the committee, and also the items on which the IIA should consult. We can discuss that when we study the schedule. In the law, it has been set out very clearly that the CE will appoint members to the committee or committees from a wide spectrum of the community. There will be representatives from the industry. As for important issues, have to be put before the committee for consultation, or committees for consultation. The IIA will be given the discretion, and the IIA will weight the various issues. If you put it down in the law that the IIA must consult the advisory committees on necessary items, we really need to discuss what do these words mean. What about the board? Do they want a 25% representation? What is your view? The number of places is replaced by a percentage. We propose there will be at least 6 board of directors, and at least 2 of the 6 will have knowledge in the insurance industry, and we don't intend to change that. 2 out of 6 is of a high proportion, 1/3, right? More than 25%. But you can dilute that. It can be 8, 10, or 12. That's the concern of the insurance industry. Can you explain that further? I was present at that consultative meeting. I heard this view time and again. Can the Bureau be more categorical? Do you insist on this provision? Chairman, to put it simply, we are not going to move any amendment to this provision. And we don't believe there is no issue of dilution. We say at least 2 directors from the industry. I hope the Secretary can give a written answer to the Federation. Yes, we can. Ms. Andrew Lam. Chairman, the demand of the industry is very clear. Unless the administration can give a clear explanation, then the insurance industry may ask for the amendment, and the chance of getting the amendment passed may not be small. I hope the administration will talk to the industry so as to resolve the issue earlier instead of digging its heels. It's not going to change. If the industry feels that the proportion is not appropriate, then the trade may be able to amend the provision.
Yes, I'd like to respond to the point. In fact, 2 years ago, when we conducted the consultation, we had repeatedly discussed this issue. We had drawn reference from overseas legislation and local legislation, including the one for SFC. We're talking about the regulatory body for the industry, not a body representing the industry. And according to international standards, we should have an independent authority, which is independent from the industry as well as the government. Even in the securities and futures industry, there is no mentioning of the proportion on the number of members. Similarly, there is no such requirement in UK and other jurisdictions. And we have given special treatment to this point by stipulating that there should be at least 2 members. We don't see any need to further revise the or amend the bill. Mr. Siwing. Now, in the past, it was a body for the industry. Now it will be transitioned to become a regulatory body. And I have some concerns. I'm concerned whether there will be an imbalance between the government's bureaucracy and self-regulation by the industry. The government's regulation may hinder the industry's development. I think the administration's answer is vague, that there will at least be 2 members, and they're unable to answer the question on possible dilution. I think you should let the industry know what will happen to the proportion of industry representatives. Now, in the past, the definition of industry may refer just to employers, and there may be voices to be heard from employees. And how would these voices be addressed? Any response? Chairman, may I respond to Mr. Yu's point? As explained by Deputy Secretary just now, across the world, in relation to the insurance industry and the financial services industry, there are international regulatory standards which may differ from those for other industries. As for the core principles of the international insurance industry, it is said that it should, the authority should be independent from the government as well as from the industry. That is why there is no government representatives in the board of directors. And Mr. Yu talked about the government's regulations. But in fact, the oversight will be done in accordance with the local legislation as well as the international regulatory standards. So I'd like to respond to this point. Our proposal is already seeking to strike a balance, having regard to the industry's views, as they are concerned whether major decisions would be made by the authority which may not be very familiar with the industry. We understand that originally the industry's concern was whether for the board of directors there should be somebody who has knowledge of the insurance industry. That is why we have included this requirement in it, in order to balance or strike a balance between international requirements and the industry's concerns. As for the industry's representativeness and increasing the number of members, to increase the proportion, we believe that this will upset the balance. Well, for the tourism industry, we have the Hong Kong Tourism Board, and we have 16 members from the industry and 12 non-industry members. However, the board has been criticized in terms of its governance by the industry because of the terms of reference. The board, in the process of regulation, the board members eventually play a role more of a regulatory nature, although this is not a regulatory body. So in implementing policies, the industry's concerns or the consumers' sentiment may be disregarded. Maybe it will be more inclined to government policies first, and the industries and consumers' concerns may be given a lower priority. That is why there is a concern that the board members should have some knowledge of the industry. And there should be representatives from various aspects of the industry to ensure a more balanced views, and that is why I asked a question on the representativeness. Well, I think the administration's reply is quite clear. They're not going to make any amendment. I think as far as composition is concerned, it's a matter of trust. So if the provision says that there should be no less than 2 members out of the 6 members, that means it could be more than 2 members. So in future, if the board is to be expanded, the administration hasn't replied whether the proportion would be maintained. Mr. Sin Chung Kai. Well, I'm also concerned, having heard the administration's answer. That means of the 6 members, all 6 could be industrial representatives. So I think, on the contrary, you should put down not more than 2 members instead of not less than 2 members, so as to avoid the allegation of self-regulation. If you want an authority to practice self-regulation, you don't need to table the amendment bill. They could continue to regulate themselves. But the problem is whether we have sufficient legal basis for this authority to regulate the industry, and the industry actually means service providers as well as those procuring the service. And how can the voice of the procurers be included here? Yes. Thank you, Mr. Sin, for your question. I think, yes, we could give it a thought whether we should change the wording from no less than 2 members or to no more than 2 members. And when you talk about procuring services, you're referring to policyholders. And our bill stipulates that while in appointing members to the board, consumers' representatives may also be appointed. I must also respond to the other point, that is, we've struck a balance between the concerns by different parties, and there was a suggestion just now that by appointing a larger proportion of members from the industry, the authorities' decisions can be influenced. But what we're trying to do is to prevent that, because the independent insurance authority, IRA, should be independent of the government as well as the industry. And we have been discussing this point for more than 2 years. And I reiterate that the administration will not amend this part of the bill, and we're going to give you a written reply to set out our justifications for members' consideration. So we can submit the paper next time. So members of the Bills Committee have held different views, and the administration's reply in relation to the diverse views is clear. If any member is dissatisfied with the provision, or if there are strong views from the industry, the member could make a committee stage amendment so that members could exercise their independent thinking and decide whether to accept the administration's proposal or the members. Next, Dr. Fernando Zhang. I agree very much with what Mr. Sin Chung Kai said. The Independent Insurance Authority is exactly for this purpose. Over the years, we have found that it's difficult for the industry to exercise self-discipline. So the spirit of the legislation is to enact an authority which is independent from the government and the industry. This neutral, independent body should be able to strike a balance in a professional manner with a high degree of transparency. And the administration already made it clear just now that across the world there is no legislation on mandating the proportion of industrial representatives on the board, and it's already, the existing provision is already biased with reference to international standards. If you want to increase the proportion, I think it's outrageous. In the past, there was not such a regulatory body, and now we are going to enact this authority. And yet, if you ask for a certain proportion of industrial representatives, it will be against the spirit of independence. Now, I don't always support the government, but I think this time we need to ensure that the authority is independent, and I don't think it's necessary to stipulate the minimum number of members. And I think the administration has already strived for a balance. And I think the administration should seriously consider whether to amend the wording of no less than 2 members. So this is the view of Dr. Fernando Cheung. Next, Mr. Chen Kin-po. Now, I need to clarify my position. I think what the commissioner said is fair, because we need somebody who can represent the industry with professional knowledge, and that is why we only require 25% instead of 100%. So let's be clear that I'm not striving for 100%. We're actually limiting ourselves to just 25%. And it's wrong for the member to suggest that all members could come from the industry. And I don't think it's right. Of course, the industry would like to have more representatives of the board. But in the spirit of fairness, they're only striving for 25%. And it's not really unreasonable. It's a matter of a lack of mutual trust. And they are worried that their representation will be diluted. And over the years, there have not been any regulatory body for the industry. As for other industries, there are other regulatory bodies, and yet they are given too much power, and the business of the industry of these industries is affected. So we're only asking for 25%. It's not even a majority. Please read the paper carefully. We're not asking for 100%, and please don't make casual allegations. We're not being greedy. I have been insisting on this point for too long. I think we should not waste time on this. Either the administration would amend it, or we will consider putting forward amendments. Well, I think our discussion on this point is very clear. And we have spent much time in discussing this issue. And I think my conclusion is also in line with the majority view of the Bills Committee. So please go back and revisit the idea.
The Bureau may also consider the views given by members. If the trade asks for setting that at 25%, that will address the concern of the trade and also the worry of Mr. Sin and Mr. Cheung. 25% is just a minority. Is it worth considering? Mr. Sin. Chairman, I want to state very clearly that I oppose the rule of 25%. I didn't say you support 25%. I just want to say my view, state my view clearly. We strongly state that we are against setting this at 25%. If you say not more than 25%, then I find it acceptable. I may find it acceptable, but if you say at least 25%, I definitely will not accept that. Well, if there isn't any further question on this, let us start the clause-by-clause study of the bill. Will start from clause 41, page 71 of the English version, 74 of the English version. And the administration has provided a clause-by-clause index, and paper is CB1 369 1415 bracket 03, which lists the policy matters and related papers for the reference of the Bills Committee. So, Secretary, would you please take us through? We are now at 22A, page 74. Yes, Chairman, we start on page 74. That is to enhance the control of the insurers. At the previous meeting, we explained that under 22.1, we require those who engage in long-term business to keep accounts. Under 22A, those who engage in long-term business, if they are formed outside Hong Kong, then the IIA, upon the written request of the insurer, require them to maintain accounts of long-term business carried on in or from Hong Kong, in place of accounts referred to in Section 22.1. These are textual updates. If members don't have any question, we move on to Section 23 or page 75. Section 22 requires separation of assets and liabilities attributable to long-term business. Under 23, Section 23(1), the assets representing a fund maintained by an authorized insurer in respect of its long-term business shall be applicable only for the purposes of that part of the business to which the fund relates. Under 23(2)A and B, there are amendments and they are consequential. Previously, we require G and H to have independent assets, and here we require all other long-term business to have separate assets. Therefore, they are consequential. If a fund exceeds the statutory requirement, then it will not be bound by subsection 1. Any question? Page 76. They are just textual updates. And the fine is 1 million, and a continuing offense to a further fine of $20,000 for each day during the offense, during which the offense continues. Page 77, Section 24. From page 77 to page 101, sections 24 and 26 are covered. I have a question on 23. You are going too fast. I have a question. Now, there is a view that assets of Hong Kong companies and other assets can be merged together to do investment to achieve economy of scale. Are you going to impose segregation? Can you explain on your policy on assets, the use of assets? Section 23, page 75. 75, page 75, application of assets of insurers with long-term business. Section 23 requires an insurer who operates long-term business to set up independent or segregated funds for each type of business, and the fund is can only be applied to the relevant business. Say, the fund can only be used in that kind of long-term business. I think, is it an existing arrangement, or you just tidying up the version, the wording? With regard to long-term business, there are different categories. Apart from G and H, under the law, at present, they can mix the assets and apply the assets together. Mr. Chen is very clear. Say for category A business can be used in category B and C in the future. In fact, in recent years, they have been doing segregation. We just spelled it out in the law more clearly. For each class of funds, they should have separate accounts, and they should segregate the assets. Say, if there is a liability under business A, the liability cannot be matched with the assets in class C. As for investment, it is another matter. For example, business A has to invest its assets, business C has to invest its assets. If you put all the, if you invest them together, then it's your investment policy. As for meeting the liabilities, and as for the accounts, they have to be segregated. It is the investment depends on the policy of the company. At present, administratively, you have already asked them to do that already. Is there any controversy if you put it in the law? We have not seen any problem. We have talked to them, in particular, on Class C business, which is very clear. Class C and Class A. Class A is traditional life insurance, and Class C is insurance-linked life insurance. They have to be separated. I have talked to the trade, and I have not seen any disputes. As for investment, it is unrelated to investment. Is it sure? Are you sure about it? Please go on, Ms. Hong. We are now on page 77. Starting from 77 to 101, sections 24 to 26, they are updating the text. It is just replacing the IA by insurance authority, and also an insurer by an authorized insurer. I pause here and let members go over the text. We welcome your questions. Pages 77 to 101. There are many pages, but they are all about the updating of the names. Can we go over the page or the pages? I don't think there are other things apart from updating the names. Mr. Sin, I have a question on page 82. Page 82, okay, let us look at it. Page 82. They've added a sentence. It is just a textual update. It's already in the provision. Now under subsection 8, it's already there. There is nothing added. The original subsection 8 carries the same provision. By the laws of any place outside Hong Kong, the meaning is the same. And it's the same phrase, by the laws of any place outside Hong Kong. Why you change the order? I think Mr. Sin is referring to the change in word order of the Chinese text, and it doesn't affect the English version. The amendment to subsection 8 is just to replace an insurer by an authorized insurer. And we just replace we just change the order of the clause in Chinese. That is to make the reading smoother. There is no specific policy implication. 10 something, 10 what? 102. Let us turn to all the way to 102, 97, 98, 99, 100. On page 100, that's also textual, page 100. And then 101, 102. Any questions? Chairman, if I may explain, page 102, section 37. Notice of proposed exercise of powers on grounds of unfitness. Before exercising with respect to an authorized insurer any power or powers conferred by Section 27 to 35 on the ground as provided in Section 26(1)(e) that any person who is a director or controller of the insurer is not a fit and proper person to hold the position held by him, the authority shall serve on the person a written notice. We are here stating the situation that doesn't apply. Say, for example, the person continues to be a controller or the director, then the mechanism to make representation does not apply. Therefore, under 103, we've added C and D, which are new. A and B are the same as the old legislation. C and D includes the provision requiring the insurer to appoint directors, and the directors have to got the approval of the authority.
That is to say, if the director or the controller, despite the objection of the authority, continues to be a director or the controller, then the representation procedure set out in Section 37 shall not apply. Legal advisor. Pause here. Thank you, Chairman. I'd like the administration to clarify one point for members' reference. We note in page 102 of the Chinese version, that is Section 7, 1B of the Insurance Companies Amendment Bill. Originally, it says public officer. Now the amendment is that the word public officer will be repealed, and a person, and then it's replaced by person. Can the administration explain that? Yes, or somebody from your team? In the Chinese markup copy, page 102. Since the authority will no longer be under the government, so it will not be a public officer of the ICO, and therefore we have amended the wording to person. Thank you, Chairman, and would the administration please explain to the committee, according to the new wording, who can be appointed, or could can anyone be appointed? Would the administration explain what kind of person would be appointed under this provision? Who would take the question, please? Chairman, let me try to explain this. In the insurance company's ordinance, it expressly provides that the authority should be the public officer. It is a person, and it is a public officer. And that is why references are made to this public officer as the insurance company, as the insurance authority, as the insurance authority is person rather than a body. Whereas for the new IIA, it comprises a board of directors, and that is why we are replacing public officer with person. So that the whole provision would mean that oral representations can be made to the members of the IIA. Ms. Ho, on the one hand, I understand the administration's explanation as the insurance authority is no longer a government body, and therefore no public officer will be involved. And yet we'd like to know what kind of persons would be appointed to hear oral representations, because oral representations may be a more relaxed approach than written representation. So you need to tell us what kind of person will be appointed to hear oral representations, of what rank or level would that person be. Would you just appoint a receptionist or any officer for hearing oral representations? So the class of persons is what Ms. Ho's referring to. The rank, or in what capacity would that person be hearing oral representations, and would there be any accountability? You must tell us, otherwise we will have no idea what you mean by a person appointed by the insurance authority. Let me supplement here. It's so written in the provision, but in actual operation, for different companies, for different businesses, different persons may be appointed to deal with the issue. So it's difficult to set out all persons that may be involved, because different case may have different circumstances. So we are going to have a handbook for the IIA, setting out clearly the work involved, the organization, the hierarchy, the ranks and their duties, and that the person of a certain rank or level should be appointed for this purpose, and all these will be set out in greater detail in the handbook. This is the main legislation, and we believe if we set out all the details here, it will be too cumbersome, making the bill too long. Now, a lot of details will be involved. There are many insurance companies in Hong Kong, and there may be different circumstances to each case, and we're going to publish a handbook stating all the details. Ms. Ho, as Ms. Choi put it, in future the whole operation would be complex. I understand. Of course, you can't put in all the details in the main legislation, but it's exactly the void that we're looking at. We don't know what kind of persons will be appointed. If at this stage we still have no idea, then we are concerned. So apart from 37(1)(b), the provision here stipulating the procedure, and that from the date of service of the notice, within a month, representations can be made to the person appointed. Last time we talked about core members, and we already showed our concerns. If as far as the procedures are concerned, you only put in the legislation that it should be somebody or a person to be appointed, then we do have concerns. Yes. in 4F, we mentioned that the insurance authority can appoint employees, members, or committee to exercise its powers, because, as we know, the IIA's terms of reference covers a wide scope. Apart from issuing licenses to intermediaries, it also gives approval to insurers to practice in Hong Kong and also to make decisions. So there may be designated personnel appointed to carry out certain functions, and we need a mechanism, therefore, in this ordinance. Under normal circumstances, there should be a mechanism for the subject to make representations. We're talking about persons considered fit and proper to hold certain positions. And the decision should, of course, be made by the authority. And if the authority considers a person not a fit and proper person to hold certain position, the authority should appoint a person other than the one making the decision to approve the subject to be a fit and proper person to hear the oral representation. And we've drawn reference from other jurisdictions. They also have internal guidelines or a handbook to stipulate the procedures. The most important point is that there should be a Chinese wall so that the person hearing the oral representation should be different from the person giving the approval. Ms. Ho. Now, we feel more at ease if the person is a public officer, because the public officer would be subject to their own anti-bribery, anti-corruption laws and their code of conduct. If you say that the person would be somebody from the insurance authority, then of course I reiterate that they would have to comply with the handbook issue in the future. But in terms of responsibilities and the possible sanctions for non-compliance may be different for a person than for a public officer. I don't know whether this phrase will be repeated in the following. That is to say, whenever there is a provision about the person appointed by the authority, do remind us, because this is an area which we still haven't had much idea, and we're not sure about the duties and responsibilities of the person so appointed. So we need to have a better understanding. And I hope that by the time we complete these clause-by-clause scrutiny of the bill, you can give us your draft guideline or handbook, because we have this experience when we are scrutinizing the bill. The relevant code of practice or the code of practice would also be given for to us for our reference. So it's about appointing the person here. And whenever we come to that, please pause and explain. But as I understand, this provision is about a request to make all representations. And if that person makes such a request to make all representations on a particular matter, that matter may be of different degree of severity, and therefore the person appointed to hear oral representations may be of different ranks. So it's quite pointless to appoint a senior officer to hear a trivial matter, or vice versa. So that is why the provision is written in such a general manner, but I understand the members' concern. I hope that when we come across something similar again, the administration could explain to us. Yes, thank you for your elucidation, and I agree with Ms. Sitho's point. Now, it's not just about appointment. When we come to more controversial provisions, we would remind members that this is a controversial clause, and we would like members to give their views on the more controversial issues. And I'd also like to remind members that we have an amendment stipulating that members of the authority will be subject to the Prevention of Bribery Ordinance. So not only public officers, but all members of the IIA will be subject to the regulation under POBO. Ms. Sitho, any more questions? No? Let's continue. Page 104. Yes, Mr. Sin Chung Kai. Please explain the justifications for rewriting page 103. That is the additional bracket 7. 6, or rather 6. Well, Chairman, let me walk you through the point. It's quite complex. Let's talk about the existing requirement. As you can see, it's always referring to sections 27 to 35, and that means under the existing insurance company's ordinance, the authority can have intervening powers on insurers, including limiting the new business orders, not to take more policies orders, and the actuaries investigation, so on and so forth. That is, when the insurance authority exercises power, it intervenes the business of the insurer for the sake of protecting consumers, so or the insured. So when the IA makes such a decision, there is a mechanism for the insurer to make representation.
Say, for example, they may say the IA shouldn't do that, or it is a fair arrangement. Now, when the IIA is of view that the person is not a fit and proper person, yet the person is performing controlling functions, then the IIA can exercise its powers, as I said earlier. Now, say, if the IIA is of view that this is not a fit and proper person to be an executive director or a controller, and that director or controller just ignore the objection of the IIA, it continues to be the director, it continues to be the controller, then the IIA can exercise its authority. And the insurance company will not have the power, will not have the right to make a representation. The IIA will immediately, say, for example, stop the insurance company from accepting new policies. Now, it says that the provision doesn't apply. It doesn't apply after the IIA has decided that the person, the director or controller, is not a fit and proper person. And under such circumstances, the right of representation will be taken away. Mr. Sin, Chairman, if they just ignore the instruction of the IIA and they continue to be controllers or directors, then is it a breach of the law? Yes, it is a criminal offense. Any other questions? If not, we move on. Page 104. Starting from page 104 to 112, they are sections 38 to Section 41, they are just replacing the insurance authority by authority, and also an authorized an insurer by an authorized insurer. Is it bracket 7? Is it a new provision? 103, page 103, bracket 7. It is just what I said then. I have to inform you, and you can make representation that rights doesn't apply. If you have a director or controller who is not a fit and proper person and have told you and you ignore my decision, and if you allow the person to continue to exercise controlling function, then your right of making representation is taken away. Sorry, speakers are coming through. Now, there is a mechanism. If we think that you are not a fit and proper person, then I will give you a notice. Let me explain this. Section 7, subsection 7 is an extension of subsection 6. Even if you appeal before the appeal has been decided, this section doesn't apply. Appeal to the tribunal. Before the tribunal makes the final decision, the IIA's order or instruction still prevails. Is it okay? Yes, understood. Understood. Let's move on. Page 105. 13A12 is a consequential amendment, isn't it? Same for page 106. I have a question here. Page 106. Manager of an insurer. What is the difference between a manager of an insurer, an authorized insurer, vis-a-vis an authorized insurer? No. One is the manager of an insurer is changed to an authorized insurer. Manager of an insurer. The word an authorized, I had it. I just want to ask, what's the difference between a manager and a manager? What is the difference between a manager of an authorized insurer and an authorized insurer? The manager, 38B, means that when the IIA is of the view that the insurance company has a problem with its finance, the IIA can appoint a manager to take over, so to speak, to put it simply. Under the present provision, we call it an insurer, the manager of an insurer, which is an insurance company. Under the insurance ordinance, insurance company's ordinance, anyone who is to conduct insurance business in Hong Kong has to be authorized by the IIA. Therefore, we call it an authorized insurer. This is to change the term an insurer from an authorized insurer. A change in nomenclature from insurer to authorized insurer. Yes, I understand the change. As for 38 capital B, it is about the so-called receiver. The manager of an authorized insurer is, in fact, the receiver who takes over, or the one who takes over the management. Now, let me explain, Mr. Chairman. Now, under certain circumstances, say, for example, when the IIA is of the view that, and with reasonable suspicion, that the insurance company is not being well managed, then under existing 38B, the authority can appoint a manager. The manager has certain powers. Say, for example, to take over certain functions of managing or operating the insurance company. Now, let me explain. The insurer is the insurance company itself. Under Section 35(2)(b), the IIA can issue a notice within a certain period of time. All the business assets should be managed by a manager. When the IIA is viewed that it is not suitable for the existing management of the insurance company to manage or to operate the insurance company, then the IIA can appoint a manager to take over, and the powers are spelled out under 38(b). Any query? If not, then we move on. Page 107. The manager of the authorized insurer, the explanation is the same. Page 108. Page 109. Chairman, if I may speak on 108. Yes, please. 38C. Mr. Chairman. Now you add authority, the manager or the member of the insurer. Page 108, subclause 3, or subsection 3 rather. Yes, Chairman. This is just a change in wording. The original is in relation to the insurer means any general meeting of the members of the insurer. Or rather, if he so thinks fit, in the future, after the setting up of the IIA, A will become the authority. So we believe that if he will not be appropriate, as in the original version, we just spell out under A, the authority, the manager, or the member of the insurer. Why you don't need to change to B? The manager of the insurer. Why not authorized insurer? Thank you. 38C has 3 subsections. Under subsection 1, we change an insurer into an authorized insurer. Under 2B, the manager and any member of the insurer, here the insurer refers to subsection 1, an authorized insurer. We just say the insurer, and it means the authorized insurer because the authorized insurer is mentioned in subsection 1. Any questions? And yes, one more question. Do you have any special meaning? The manager of any member of the insurer. Any member of the insurer. How does it differ from the manager and any member of the insurer? Is there a difference between the manager of the insurer and any member of the insurer? Well, if there is a manager, or if there is a member who has made an application, then the court can recognize or refuse to recognize the resolutions of the AGMs. The purpose of 38C is that the court can reject certain decisions of the AGM. The decisions may not be beneficial to the insured. Therefore, if somebody raised this, then the court can revisit such decisions or resolutions. Any queries? If not, then we move on to 109. There are also textual amendments. 110, 4 amendments. Also about nomenclature. 111. Also the same. 112. two amendments. Section 5H. This is also consequential. We just changed the number from section 5 to 5H. 113, page 113. 113, section 41, offenses. We propose to cross out B. 41(1)B. That is, he furnished information which he knows to be false. The amendment becomes 1A. We propose to increase the penalty on conviction on indictment to a fine of $1 million and to imprisonment for 2 years, or on summary conviction to a fine at level 6 and to imprisonment for 6 months. The offense deals with furnishing information which one knows to be false, and to make the penalty similar to that of obstructing the IIA to investigate into the offenses. I have seen 41(1)B cross out. Yes, 41(1)B. Now that one is proposed to be crossed out. Is false in a he knows to be false in a material particular, or recklessly furnishes information which is false in a material particular. I see that 1A is to replace 1B. Now here it says the person knows to be false in a material particular, or recklessly furnishes information which is false in a material particular. Now, with the change of wording, are there any difficulties differences in terms of adducing evidence?
Yes, who would take the question? Any difference for making this change? Thank you, Chairman. Now, Ms. Ho pointed out very correctly that for 1B, it will be replaced by the new section 1A. And in the English version, the wording is entirely the same. In the Chinese version, however, we have made the textual amendments to improve the drafting style, and the meaning is just the same, because in the English version, the wording is exactly the same. Now, if you read the Chinese version, it says seems to be, and then in the amendment, the person knows to be false. So it means that the person knowingly commits the crime in one version, and in the other version, in the eyes of the third party, that the person commits a crime. That is the Chinese version. Now your answer is suggesting that it's a matter of translation, but when the case is taken to court, you can ask for a Chinese hearing or an English hearing. So will there be any difference? Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Ms. Ho, for your question. I see Ms. Ho's point is on the original provision that the person seems to have, and then in the new version, it is the person knows to be. In fact, in the original version, in the English version, it says in purported or purported to be. In the new version, it says a person who, in purported compliance with the requirement imposed under Section 34. So the meaning is the same. The meaning of the text is very clear, that the person, whilst contravening Section 34, is in purported compliance, under 34, and that is why we're changing the text. So you are suggesting that the old version isn't good enough, so you want a new version. Does our legal advisor agree? Thank you, Chairman. As the administration puts it, in the English version there is no change. The mens rea remains the same. That is, in English, is knowledge and recklessness. Also, as Mrs. C puts it, in purported compliance. That's the English version. But in Chinese version, the wording is changed from 明知 knowingly to 知道 to knows. And also recklessly, so and so remains the same. So, as I understand, knows or recklessly, the wording being translated into Chinese as 知道 and 罔顧實情. As I understand, are the modern Chinese drafting style adopted by the law draftsmen in recent years. So more importantly, if the old version isn't good, we should change it into a better version. Right, so it's all about improvements. If there are no questions, let's continue. Page 114. Page 114 is about further regulatory powers on insurers. 41A is interpretation. We're going to talk about inspection and investigation. And 41A refers to inspector, meaning a person appointed as an inspector under Section 41B6. And business record refers to the following. In relation to an insurer means a record or document relating to A. a business conducted by the insurer, or B. a transaction or activity that was undertaken in the course of or may affect the business conducted by the insurer. And then investigator means a person directed or appointed by the authority under Section 41D1 to investigate any matter. Page 115. Mrs. Sin, you have a question? Chairman, about these several posts, in particular, inspector and investigator, see if I'm correct. They will be persons appointed by the IIA in future, is that right? And here you provide a definition that is appointed, that is a person appointed as an inspector or appointed as an investigator, whereas in the previous provisions you are unable to put in the details. Am I right? You can put it this way. The functions to be performed by the person may be different. We have different insurers of different scale, and different personnel may be involved. It may be a shareholder or somebody in senior position or just an employee. And here, this is a person appointed for a particular purpose, that is for conducting investigation or inspection. So the person should be appointed as an inspector here. I think this is a more focused duty, and this is about regulatory powers. As far as inspection and investigation is concerned, there are certain requirements. Any questions? If not, then let's continue. Page 115. 41B on page 115 is about inspection and investigation without warrant. And an inspector may exercise the powers under subsections 2 and 3 for ascertaining whether an authorized insurer is has complied with A. a provision of this ordinance, B. a notice or requirement given or imposed under a provision of this ordinance, C. a term or condition of an authorization granted under Section 8, or D. any other condition imposed under any provision of this ordinance. Legal advisor, you have something to say about the English version? Thank you, Chairman. Now, about the new 41 capital B, I see Chairman is reading the Chinese version, but in the English version, I'd like the administration to clarify one point. In 41 capital B subsection 1, it says whether an authorized insurer is complying with, has complied with, and here, should it be is compliant with or has complied with an additional or to align the drafting with the Chinese version? I like the administration to see if an amendment is necessary. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Legal Advisor, for your comment. Now, on the face of it, I agree with the legal advisor's comment, and I will go back and consider whether to propose an amendment. All right, let's continue. 41 capital B 2. At any reasonable time, an inspector may enter any premises used by the authorized insurer in connection with his business. May inspect and make copies or otherwise record details of a business record of the insurers, and C, may make inquiries of the insurer or a person specified in subsection 5 concerning a business record of the insurer or concerning a transaction or activity that was undertaken in the course of or may affect the business conducted by the insurer. Subsection 3. In exercising a power under subsection 2B or C, the inspector may require the authorized insurer or a person specified in subsection 5 A to give the inspector access to a business record of the insurer. B. To produce to the inspector within the time and at the place specified in the requirement a business record of the insurer. And C. To answer a question concerning a business record of the insurer or a transaction or activity that was undertaken in the course of or may affect the business conducted by the insurer. Yes, Mr. Sin Chung Kai. Chairman, I'd like to know whether there is any legal requirement on how many years of business record that should be kept. Chairman, pardon my ignorance, I'd like to ask some basic questions. In the whole ordinance, are there any stipulation on the years of business records to be kept? And is there any requirement on form and format of the business record? As you know, nowadays, banks and other shops, for example, may need to keep transaction records, including audio recording. This may be part of the business record to comply with the legal requirement. I'd like to know whether there is such a requirement here. Yes, there may be an inspector inspecting the records, but is there any requirement on the proper keeping of business record? Yes. It's not provided in the legislation. However, for existing business, that is for valid insurance policies, there are other regulatory requirements for proper keeping of business records, including application forms for the policy and the notices given. And this is about business record. As regards other financial information, such records should be kept for at least 7 years. So we have different requirements for different lines of business. For example, for investment-linked policies, we ask the insurers to make a after-sale confirmation on the telephone. So as long as the policies remain valid, they must keep such audio recordings until some time after the expiry of the policies. So we have different requirements for different products. For financial records, they are required to keep financial records after the end of the financial year for 7 years. Yes, I understand the financial part. I think the regulation is more or less the same as imposed by other financial institutions. Now, for valid policies, you have a record-keeping requirement, and the reason is obvious. But in future, I reckon there may be complaints about policies that are no longer valid or expired. For such policies, do you have the such a similar requirement? Otherwise, when a complainant approaches the authority, and then when questioned by the authority, the insurer may say that they no longer keep such records as the policies have expired. We are updating the relevant requirements and stipulations for investment-linked insurance policies. We issued a new set of guidelines 2 years ago, requesting for after-sale confirmation. The telephone records should be kept for a certain period of time, and we are continuing to update the relevant guidelines for different businesses.
Here, we will also impose a requirement of keeping records for several years. As for such requirements, we may not need to put it in the principal ordinance, but we will set out the requirements for different business. Now, considering your instructions or guidelines, in the future you will require different types of business to keep records for a certain period of time. What's the basis for such powers? Where are they in your principal ordinance? As far as such powers are concerned, will people apply for JR on the grounds of ultravirus? Yes, we do have such powers. With regard to the conduct of insurance companies, we are given the power to regulate such conducts, and the issue of such instructions or guidelines. That's under Clause 131, or Section 131. Is it Section 131? Yes, there is. Page 322. Page 322. (131) Codes or guidelines on functions of authority, etc. Shall we not jump so far? Can you give her 5 minutes to explain that, and when we come back, when we come to that section, then we can discuss the details. Okay. Okay, I give you 5 minutes to explain that. Chairman. Under the existing ordinance 4A3, 41A? Well, in fact, I can issue guidelines 4A, very early then. Yes, the existing ordinance 4A. I am empowered to issue guidelines 4A3. Page 15 of the markup copy of Chinese. They cross out 3 because we cross it out. And under the new 131, section 131, there will be such powers given. Mr. Sin asked me whether we have the legislative foundation for issuing guidelines. Now, before amending the law, you rely on 4A3. And after amending the law, you rely on 131. I can see that subsection 3 is very simple, but 131 is more complicated or longer. Chairman, please bear with me. Can you ask them to explain section 131 to me? Page 322 of the English version as well. Briefly, just briefly explain that. Anyone? Now that's about the guidelines of the that's the powers of the insurance authority. The insurance authority may publish in the Gazette in any other manner it considers appropriate codes or guidelines that it considers appropriate for giving guidance in relation to a matter relating to any of the functions of the authority under this ordinance, or in relation to the operation of a provision of this ordinance. To avoid doubt, the power of the authority to publish codes or guidelines under this section is in addition to and not in derogation of any other power of the authority to publish codes or guidelines under any provision of this or any other ordinance. The authority may from time to time amend the whole or any part of a code or guideline published. A failure on the part of a person to comply with the provisions set out in the code or guidelines does not by itself render the person liable to any judicial or other proceedings. However, in any proceedings under this ordinance before a court, the code or guideline is admissible in evidence, and if a provision in a code or guideline appears to the court to be relevant to a question arising in the proceedings, the court must, in determining the question, take into account any compliance or non-compliance of the provision. A code or guideline published under this section may be of general or specific application or may be made so far as to apply only in specified circumstances and may make different provisions for different circumstances and provide for different cases or classes of cases. A code or guideline published under this section is not subsidiary legislation. Now, that's the question. Let's go back to 115B. You conduct an investigation, you ask to inspect the records, you ask to keep records, but such powers are not in the law. You ask them to require to make records, but they say, sorry, I haven't made any voice recording. You can't prosecute them, right? You inspect them, ask them to provide you with certain records, but they say, I've forgotten that to do that. I had forgotten to do that when I received the order. Can you prosecute them? How can you deal with that situation? Can you really deal with that? Or you can't? Chairman, as for 131 subsection 2, it is based on the code or guidelines. Even if it is not subsidiary legislation, it doesn't derogate the authority. It is just to supplement the authority or the exercise of powers by the authority. We've talked to the DOJ. This will not undermine the powers of the authority. Now, let me give you a specific situation. Somebody comes to you and make a complaint. You send an inspector to look into that case. And the inspector arrives at the premises and seek relevant records. They say they don't have such records. You can't sue them because there is no substance. You can only sue them. You can't sue them for the substance of the case, but you can sue them for not keeping good records. But how can you do so? Because that's not an offense. The question is, it is not in the subsidiary legislation. I don't ask it specifically in the subsidiary legislation, but if it is subsidiary legislation, then they have breached the law. If they don't put it in the subsidiary legislation, let them explain. Can you sue the person or sue the company? If you look at the provision on misconduct, if you breach the provision of the ordinance, and it also includes the guidelines and codes issued by the IIA, it is misconduct if the record is not kept. If there is such misconduct on the part of the insurer, or if the employees, in respect of certain transaction, has not kept any record, if he does it deliberately, if he doesn't comply, then the controller will be held responsible. Whether it is the controller or the one responsible for intermediary activities, this is a misconduct. Whether the controller is a fit and proper person will be the question. They don't comply with the guidelines or the codes, they will be affected. Legal advisor, I'll try to assist the Bills Committee. I think my understanding of Mr. Sin's question is that in conducting an inspection, certain records are required to be produced, but the person didn't keep such records. Will the administration explain, according to different types of records, whether there are provisions requiring the keeping of what sort of records, and without keeping such a record, this is an offense. Different documents may have different requirements in terms of record keeping. Thank you, legal advisor. Yes, your explanation can supplement my question. Chairman, with regard to different types of documents and the requirements of keeping such documents and the failure to keep such documents and consequences, we can give an answer in writing. We can itemize these things and spell out the consequences for not keeping the records. Please, in your written explanation, also relate the document to specific provisions. Chairman, Mr. Sin, now, the supplementary paper provided by the administration will address your question. If we keep sticking to this problem, we may have to refer to many provisions. I just want to raise my concern here. If there aren't adequate provisions to regulate keeping of records, then the inspector may not be able to have access to the records, because when you make an appointment, they will just destroy the records. Yes, I think Mrs. Sin, 2 more members are waiting in the line, and we'll end our meeting at 1:45. Your question has been noted by the authority, by the administration, and that's about the keeping of records. If they do not cooperate, if they destroy the documents, what will be the penalties and what will the legal basis? They will address your answer. Mr. Andrew Leung, there is a need to find a suitable balance. After explanation, the administration still has to wait and balance whether It can balance the interests of the insurers and the insured, and it is good to put it down in the law. My question is this, concerning the inspector. Concerning the powers of the inspector, whether there is a warrant or not, how does the power differ from the inspector under the SFO, Securities and Futures Ordinance? Under the SFO, under the MPFAO, or rather MPFSO, under the Financial Reporting Council Ordinance, the power of inspection is similar. As for the need for a warrant, a court warrant, that is in relation to gaining access, and a warrant has to be obtained from the magistracy. Next, Mr. Paul Chair. Chairman, I may have misunderstood Mr. Sin's view. If we look at the ensuing provisions, there are certain powers, say you have to provide answer. If you don't, then you will be brought to the courts and you will be penalized. Another 41 big capital I, there are criminal consequences. I think the provisions have addressed Mr. Sin's question. The administration says that they will provide a paper. Are they going to repeat that? The explanation? I think, in fact, you have done what you should do.
Yes. Well, these are two different things. Mr. Sin Chung Kai was talking about keeping of records, and in the course of investigation, our investigation is empowered our investigator is empowered under the law to ask for business records. However, before the investigation begins, will there be any consequence if the insurer destroys or conceals a business record? Yes, it is a criminal offense to destroy or conceal business records. So this actually addresses Mr. Sin's concerns. As I understand Mr. Sin's concerns have been addressed in the bill itself. If our understanding is correct, Mr. Sin is asking about what kind of records that should be kept, failing which, what consequence will there be? And just now, the legal advisor also referred to different requirements for different documentation. So it's not the same as what Mr. Paul Chair said just now, and we're going to give a checklist in due course. Mr. Paul Chair, you have a follow-up? So exactly on this, about 41 capital A interpretation, there is a definition on business record. It covers a wide scope. Apart from transaction, it also covers any activity that may affect the business conducted by the insurer. So my first question is this. It's about your justifications on setting such a wide scope. And my second question is whether you have drawn reference from other jurisdictions. Yes, we'll take the question, Chairman, on whether the scope is wide when we regulate an insurer. We look at the business conducted by the insurer and the relevant record and document kept by the insurer, policies, for example. I don't think it's unreasonable or out of line if we ask for a record of document relating to valid insurance policies, because the IIA's terms of reference is to oversee the business of insurers, and the document may also include the minutes of the board meetings or any other document stating possible conflict of interest. I think this is a general description of the documents involved here. As for other requirements, after the meeting, we're going to submit another paper to further explain to the committee. Do we have a similar provision in other legislation at the moment? Thank you, Chairman. Let me take Mr. Chair's question. As DS put it just now, the whole new Part 5A is drafted having made reference to the SFO and the MPFA and also CFT, money laundering and counter finance, so terrorism ordinance. Yes, just now, according to your answer, it's related to transaction or activities undertaken by the insurer. Of course, they should be investigated, but here it says any activity that may affect the business conducted by the insurer. So does it mean that anything related to the business, legal advice, anything to do with business, or even the competitors' information may also be subject to inspection? Will the scope be too wide? Who would take the question? Chairman, I think we have no alternative but make a general description here. Apart from policies and correspondence, whether there will be other documents involved about other dealings, other correspondence. If there is a question on reasonableness in exercising its power, the IIA will have to exercise its powers reasonably. So can you say that any record or document barely related will be involved? Well, we also have any money laundering requirements under the relevant legislation, and we have similar general descriptions. It's difficult because there are different insurance products and a lot of documents of different nature may be involved. So it's difficult to be specific here. Mr. Chair, I think you should follow up on this point on other platforms. Well, but you should be careful. If you give the power to the authority, then the insurer may be penalized easily for failing to keep certain business record. So here it says a transaction or activity that was undertaken in the course of the business conducted by the insurer. The scope may be too wide. I think we can give it more careful thought. Two more members. We try to finish it before 12:45. Mr. Sin Chung Kai, Chairman, I'll save my question for the time being. Mr. Chan Kin Paul, Chairman, about the keeping of business records. I think Mr. Paul Chair has made a very important point. I want to reiterate 2 points. First of all, if you want record keeping, first of all, there should be such documentation or records available. Of course, if there are records that eventually destroyed, then the insurer should be penalized. But first of all, there must be such a record. And the second question on whether the scope is too wide, I again think that reasonableness is important. You must admit that you should be reasonable, and please, in your written reply, tell us whether you think it is reasonable or not. Yes, I think the administration has heard your view, Ms. Sit Ho. Mr. Sin Chung Kai raised a question and gave some examples in this regard. For example, in the sale of mini bonds, in the course of investigating the sale of mini bond, there were staff soliciting or enticing customers to take out insurance products more than they could afford. And Mr. Sin's question was on whether the relevant audio recording should be kept, showing that the staff had sufficiently explained to the customer the relevant risks and liabilities. And please also address this point in your written reply. Administration? This seems to be a regulatory requirement in the course of business. It may be different from the inspection or investigation process. Well, I think we can more or less conclude for the day. Next item, any other business, date of next meeting. Now, 2 meetings are tentatively scheduled. The first one on the 9th of February, Monday, 2:30, and also the second one, the 3rd of March, Tuesday, 2:30 p.m. Mr. Chan Kin-po, Chairman, on the 9th of February, the insurance sector will be meeting with Dr. Koh Man in a consultation session on the voluntary health insurance scheme. This is important. I hope you can reschedule the meeting because this meeting will clash with that one. I need to attend that meeting at about 3. When the conversation with Dr. Koh may start at about 4. So please consider rescheduling to another date or use another time slot. Yes, will the Secretariat please help us with that? We can either reschedule it or to move it earlier or later in the day. Let's decide on that later. So we're now up to 115, Section 41B of Part 5. Let's resume from here next time. So nothing under AOB. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.